Hello, it's 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚒𝚝 here, and in my last video I kind of talked about page 3 and 4 and how they kind of tie into the true meaning of what the D initial is. And if you want to know more about that, watch this video. I will be touching on some of that later on in this video. But at the end of that one, I kind of promised to, in this video, talk about the very first page of the manga. And I guess the second page as well, but how it all kind of ties into the overarching mythology in the One Piece series, and in this case, mainly Egyptian mythology. Now, it is my personal belief that Oda, with his manga series One Piece, is actually combining essentially all mythologies into one story and one piece of art and fiction. And the amount of ties and connections that come from that are honestly probably infinite. And this video is kind of going to start to unravel some of that and just kind of show basically this huge multiversal web that Oda has spun starting from page 1 of the manga. And we're going to focus mainly on Egyptian myths here. And we're also going to kind of get to the exact chapter that the One Piece as we know it is going to be found and what exactly that will be. But that'll be at the end of the video, so stay tuned. And so with that, once again, my name is 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚒𝚝, and this video is going to be all about uncovering the truth behind Roger's execution and the secrets hidden behind the very first page of the manga. This is also probably a great time to tell you to please like and share and subscribe and all that stuff, and comment what you think at the end of this video and all that jazz. And so to start off this video, I'm going to kind of have to go through a quick summary of some of the original Egyptian myths, and mainly the myths surrounding Apep / Apophalis / 𝚤𝚒𝚙𝚒𝚑𝚝. I know there's been some videos online before, and I know Marshall D. Preach has one, but in my opinion, no offense to him, those dudes are great, but the video itself kind of greatly minimizes Apep's role in Egyptian creation mythology. So we're going to start with kind of just going over a little bit of that stuff and then getting into how it ties into all of this stuff and what exactly these rituals are and what Oda's kind of playing with and trying to teach us, starting with the very first page of the manga. So when it comes to Egyptian mythology, we have to kind of keep in the forefront of our minds just how much and how long Egyptian gods and worships all spanned. For instance, if we want to say all of Jesus worship and Christ worship stuff started 2,000 years ago, well, the entirety of Egyptian mythology kind of spanned the course of around at least 5,000 years, according to books and scholars and all that stuff like that, but most likely even longer than that. But in 5,000 years, 3,000 years, whatever, those mythologies have evolved and changed, and they kind of morphed to fit the time period and the people's ideals and aspirations and problems all the time. So when it comes to Egyptian mythology, the myths are very kind of hard to figure out and unscatter and really pin down one exact version of all this stuff. So I'm just going to kind of give a brief summary of the basics that seem to kind of inhabit all of the iterations of them. And in this video, we're going to be dealing with only really Apep or Apophis. And as I said earlier, Apep, other names that he would go by were Apophis as well as 𝚤𝚒𝚑𝚝, but Apep's kind of the easiest one for me to say, and it has some kind of word clues that we'll deal with later on in Japanese in this video. But Apep, also known as the serpent from the Nile, as well as the evil dragon or evil lizard or great serpent, was in some versions of the mythology born from the umbilical cord of the sun god Ra, and other versions he was kind of always present after the initial creation of the universe in the primordial chaos waters, which were known as Nu in Egyptian mythology. And doesn't matter what time period it is, Apep was always the enemy of Ra and was always known as the Lord of Chaos. Now, when it comes to ancient cultures and mythologies, there's lots of things with chaos and creation. And there's a great channel called Lucifer Means Lightbringer, by David Lightbringer, and he talks about in one of his videos, and I believe that he has kind of one of the best definitions for this chaos idea, where it's not so much chaos in the way that we think of things as just kind of being crazy and destructive and all that stuff. Chaos is more the unrealized potential of imaginative energy. So if creation is actually using that energy to make things and make life and all that stuff, chaos is just the form before that. If you're a YouTuber or you're an artist, you have that chaos going inside your head when you're thinking about a project. And then when you actually go to make that project or that art piece or that video, that's kind of the creation part of it. So we take chaos and form it into creation. But when it comes to Apep in particularly, he is unequivocally the evil aspect of chaos. There is no good or redeeming values in the chaos that the god Apep represents. It is all evil and destructive. And as I said a little bit ago, Apep is known as the enemy of Ra, and he would always, during the nighttime, the Egyptians believed, battle Ra and try to essentially eat the sun. And Apep could not present himself in the physical living realm, so he would always be categorized as being in the underworld, and he would always lie below the horizon, and in most versions he would wait in the western mountains called 𝚲𝚘𝚡, where the sun actually would set every day. And then other iterations of the myth, Apep would actually lie in the mountains just before dawn to attack the sun as it was rising, in an area which was known as the 10th region of the night. And when Apep would launch his attack, his roar would fill the air to signify that he was attacking Ra and to scare all the people of the world. And just like many Norse myths and all that stuff, he was also known as the world encircler, based on his giant size and his ability to kind of appear anywhere in the world to attack Ra. And now one of the most interesting things about Apep was that he was kind of unkillable. He was undefeatable. You could, every single night, technically, the Egyptians believed that Ra defeated and would dismember and scatter Apep's body. Yet the following night, he would always come back. So he was kind of a immortal being in the idea that you could kill him and it would not matter. He would come back and rise and then battle Ra once again. And this was kind of the interpretation for the Egyptians as far as it goes. Night turned to day and all that stuff. And there were some times when it would be thought that Apep actually won and was able to eat the sun, and this would be represented by a solar eclipse. And the other kind of most interesting thing about Apep is that it was the only Egyptian god that was not only never worshipped, but there were no temples or any shrines or anything like that made for him. But there were specific directions that the Egyptian people would follow every year and every day to make sure that his power was subdued and that he would continue to lose his battle against Ra, and thus the sun would rise every day. And that's where the first page of One Piece comes into all of this. This is where it actually gets really fun and crazy and kind of mind-altering, and you'll see what I mean once I start kind of explaining it. But as I said, Apep was not worshipped. There was no shrines or domains made specifically for him, but there was a ton of rituals that were performed to subdue him. People would make wax figurines in the shape of a coiled snake, and they would stomp it and spit on it. And now, of course, when Apep wasn't represented as a giant snake, he was also in the form of a giant crocodile. But that is really just the tip of the iceberg. When it came to Apep, there was 6 specific acts that were included in a ritual to ban the deity that needed to be included in all aspects of Egyptian art. And the really, really crazy part is that on this very first page of the One Piece manga, Oda has recreated those rituals. Now, what does it all mean? We'll get to it at the end of this video. Maybe. But I'm going to go over the specific acts first and then kind of show you exactly what I've seen and where they are on the very first page of the manga, because it's going to really blow your mind. Now, these rituals, these 6 rituals, include spitting upon Apep, defiling Apep with the left foot, taking a lance to smite Apep, fettering Apep, taking a knife to smite Apep, and putting fire upon Apep. Now, to see all these on the very first page of the One Piece manga, we're going to need to ask for the assistance of Ra and use some light to shine through the page and show us kind of the secrets behind it and exactly what's going on here. And if you've watched other videos of mine and are kind of still on the fence about all these light tricks, this one is, I think, going to really cement the idea that this is a vital clue-finding trick that Oda desperately wants us to figure out and use to ascertain huge clues inside the story. Because when we do this, each and every single one of those rituals of the keeping Apep at bay things are clearly presented to us. Now, before we get to all that craziness that 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚒𝚑 has for you. My name's Mr. Pie. I like to point out some things for the people in the back who think that One Piece doesn't get good or start hinting at major story events until Alabasta. Those people are more disappointing than my son. But Ichiro Oda really is a genius. He's, I would almost say, God's gift to man. It's almost like his name means to praise God. He's so godly. But his hints and foreshadowing for the entire series, we'll get to the page 1, but in this cover spread, are just immense. Now I'm not going to spend too much time on the fact that the word cloud originally meant rock, or how on all pirate treasure maps, X marks the spot of the treasure, like the shape that Luffy's body's in. And I'm not going to spend too much time on how, in quotation marks, Usopp's father, Yasopp's hat saying Yaso, which in Japanese means Jesus, or Vaso, which means a false friend. And speaking of Usopp, I'm not going to harp too much on the fact that the Shadow King Usopp himself is present in this cover spread. Right there in the crown. See how that's Usopp's nose? With his little hat that he has after the time skip. But Oda couldn't possibly think that far in advance, could he? And I'm also not going to harp on too much that if you follow the tracks of every single character in the red-haired pirate's eyes, they go right to Luffy's left eye. Kind of like they're going to want to steal it or something, like it's an Osiris myth. But we'll get to that. What I really want to talk about here, though, is how weird it is that all of the red-haired pirates are kind of centered around a very mermaid-looking woman in Nami, and how dangerous that would be around quite a bit of swashbucklers as themselves. Now, I polled a group of cheerleaders that I have locked in the brig, and they all agreed on one thing, that if I let them go, they're not going to tell anybody about my One Piece obsession. But before they all escaped in the lifeboat that I let them use with the little hole I drilled in the back of it, they all agreed as well that it's kind of weird for a woman to be put in that situation. Almost like the whole point of Luffy's journey is to deliver Nami somewhere. Maybe like how Ra's boat, which was called the Boat of a Million Years, almost like the 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚒𝚑, was used to carry the sun to and from the sky every single day. But anyway, back to that other idiot. God, I hate that guy. But let me know if you like this guy by leaving a comment in the web zone here if you want me to send you a sushi roll. Now, hopefully you remember kind of all the stuff I was saying about Apep and some of the crazy things surrounding that god and its rituals or whatever, but I will go over them again here. But one of the first things, especially in the English translation, that kind of jumps out at me is every single night when Apep started battling Ra, he would fill the sky with his roar. So that sound effect is right here, front and center for us to see in the English translation. And another pretty crazy thing is Apep was sometimes represented by having a bunch of people and souls behind him to show how many souls he had eaten in the other world. And I think that's kind of all the people here that are cheering on Roger's execution here. Especially this guy who we've seen in Sanji's flashback, as well as the guy that gets shot in chapter 1. Just seems to be a huge kind of otherworld clue and stuff like that. And then when you actually look at this first page in the Japanese version, you'll see what I like to call the bird clouds / the Usopp nose clouds. Now, Mr. Pie talked about how clouds originally meant rock, okay? And I believe that Usopp being a descendant or a clone or a reincarnation of Rox 𝙲𝚘𝚎 is a very, very real possibility. But that's one of those crazy things I don't like to mention in these videos because I'm not going to spend the hours of proof that idea takes in this video. So just, an idea to be, kind of thrown out there. But enough talking about, let's finally get into it. Now, I'm going to start with kind of the most up for interpretation one. And like I said, we're going to be looking at this page through the light to kind of see all this stuff. So we're going to kind of ask for the assistance of Ra / the sun, light, whatever, to see these kind of secrets in the first page. And the first one is spitting upon Apep. Now, like I said, this one's kind of the most up for interpretation. The spot where Roger's head is cut off lines up directly to be on the side of Lucky Roo's cheek, and I believe that's kind of the interpretation of a spitting on him or whatever. But spitting also meant to stab, and I always find it so odd that for such a prominent moment in the history of One Piece, here he gets his head chopped off, but in the anime it shows Roger being stabbed through the heart, and like I said, spitting kind of meaning to stab before. I think all that could be being played with here. And I promise that these get much more concrete as we go on. And now the next up is defiling Apep with the left foot. Now, once again, this one's a little bit up for interpretation because I believe that one representation of this is Lucky Roo's foot at the bottom, his left foot kind of stomping where Roger would be. But I think that Oda plays around a lot with hands and feet and switching them around symbolism-wise. And we see Nami's left hand going through him pretty hardcore here. Now, this is going to be very important for the last ritual, but for here at least, I think that both of these could kind of represent this left foot idea and stomping on Apep. And I think that the feet thing can also be with these guards up here in the top panel. But I think that all of those kind of tie into this left foot and left arm idea. But the next four, I promise, are going to be super, super clear and very easy to understand and see. So the next one is taking a lance to smite Apep. And when we look through the light, we have Luffy's giant hand looking like it's holding one of these guards' swords or lances or spears. Now, could these two guards also be representations of the little boy and fat man atomic bombs that forced Japan to its knees during World War II? Sure, but we're not going to talk about that here. For this, I think mainly it's just Luffy's giant arm kind of holding this lance thing. Now, one of the weird things is that Roger's name means spear. It means a lot of other things too, but it mainly means spear. And then we get to a fun one, this fettering of Apep. Now, fettering means to bound the legs, okay? And I've looked at my personal version of the One Piece Volume 1. I've looked at the scans, and I wish I still had my original US Shonen Jump Volume 1 that had this page and color in it. But nowhere do I see in the manga Roger's hands bound. Okay, there's no chain in between these things. His two wrists, they look like they're in chains, but there is no actual chain there that I can see. Let me know if you found something different. I'm not talking about the anime. I'm a manga boy. I really think that the anime is used to kind of throw us off with clues, but also to clue us in better with other clues. But overall, I trust the manga as canon more than anything else. And I do not see his hands at all in chains, which makes me think that, okay, he's on his knees, Roger's on his knees, his feet must be in chains maybe, which would equal this fettering idea. Now, I was encouraged recently by a great new friend and a fellow YouTuber to kind of get into some of my more crazier ideas and mentions. And if you watch this long, maybe you could view it as like a sort of reward for dealing with my craziness for this long. But I believe that Roger was actually a fishman and maybe even a goldfish or a ogre fish in some way. And just a fisherman being put on land, I think, would also fit this fettering idea. But that's really crazy. I'm going to get into it in other videos. I would say just kind of some hints for that is think about how when Roger met Tom in Fishman Island, he hugged him. And we've only seen him hug one person, and that was him. And I think that there's a lot of stuff going on there with him actually being related to him and Whoop Slap. But we'll get to that in other videos. Now, the next ritual for keeping Apep at bay is actually taking a knife to smite Apep. And this one's really easy because when you look at the first panel from the back page, there's a giant knife sticking right through him. Now, this knife is also hitting his left leg, which I could see as a tie-in to this whole defiling him with the left foot stuff. But this knife thing, I mean, we not only get these two soldier executioners or whatever holding the knife to him, but this knife in the back page, I think, is the biggest clue of just, you know, that being this idea of taking a knife to smite him. And I think you could kind of view Luffy's giant hand as the hand of God, maybe, also smiting him in some way. So all of that, I think, is a pretty easy one that ties it all together. And now the last one, putting fire upon Apep, is where I'm going to lose a bunch of you. So first, I'm going to kind of go into what I was talking about earlier in this video about when exactly I think the One Piece as we know it will be found or unleashed. And I believe that that's going to be chapter 1111, which also coincides to being the very first chapter that will be released next year on January 1st, 2024. Now we get 2 and 2 equals 4, 4 ones, all that stuff being numbers and playing with numbers and stuff like that with the dates and the chapter titles or whatever, or chapter numbers or whatever. I think Oda's planned this out since the very beginning. And I believe that all of it's actually just a big trap. I talked about in my very first video that I ever made, the for Bink's sake, wake up, all that stuff about how raft actually originally meant trap. Well, the word laugh originates from the word law. And while I do think that there's a huge chance that there will be some talking skeleton face like the Pirates of the Caribbean logo or something like that telling a story at Laugh Tale, the word law actually can mean information or wisdom from a trustworthy or reliable source, which I think fits into all that stuff. But I think mainly it's a trap. Now, if you take the 4 ones and arrange them very easily, it makes a box or a treasure chest. And even more than that, there's an actual element called pirate. And this element is also known as fool's gold. And it presents itself naturally as geological blocks and squares of what looks like gold or silver. And I think that Oda is very in tune to elements and alchemical studies and all that stuff like that. And the idea that he's kind of taken an element that's called pyrite, that's known as fool's gold, and presents itself as also the form of a box or a chest, I think is all a big clue to it being a big trap. Law can also mean the state or situation one is in, and something which affects or changes, like a force. And I don't usually go too hard into the immediate predictions, and I guess a year from now isn't that immediate, but come back to this video in a year from now and let's see if I was right about this chapter 1111 thing. And if that wasn't enough for bonus points, I actually think that at that point we'll all have been introduced to the person previously trapped in this One Piece trap, Davy Jones, the Starman himself. Now, Mr. Pie talked earlier about how all of the One Piece story might be a kind of a hidden secret journey to deliver Nami to nefarious people. And that's where this putting fire upon Apep thing really comes into play. I think that Nami's arm going through Roger here is to signify her being a reincarnation of the Eye of Ra, which was always represented in a female goddess and always kind of took a vengeful course for humanity, which Nami as well as Robin often take up in the story. I believe that Nami's arm here going through Roger in this top panel is actually a symbolic representation of the Eye of Ra taking out its vengeance against Apep. And I think in this case, with all the hurting Luffy jokes and the weird hockey ability things that Nami seems to have, I don't actually think it's just a representation. I think that it's actual fact that she is indeed the reincarnation of the Eye of Ra. But as always, I will get to that in future videos, a couple more down the line. That's not going to be one of the next couple videos. My next actual video is going to kind of deal with how the drums of liberation are a huge clue into the idea of the Red Chief himself, the Egyptian god Set. As always, if you've watched the video this long, thank you so much. Continue to keep smiling and dialing, and my name is 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚢𝚛, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.